First time ever, Father Time is on camera. I know, guys. You know, keep in mind, first of all, that the camera puts on 10 years and 30 pounds. Keep that in mind. And still, yeah, still got it. Not really. So here we are, London Heathrow. I got the super duper pack, ultimate extravaganza, and we're just going to do a origination pre-flight. That's exciting. It's for my buddy Logan, who's one of my original subscribers, who asked me to take a cold, dark airplane, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to do a series on the 777. Let me show you what I'm thinking. I'm going to call it the Father Time. Oh, by the way, I ordered a neon sign that's going to say Father Time. I'm all in. Okay, I'm not going to make a living off this. I'm probably never going to get to 1,000 subscribers, but it is something I'm going to do 2, 3, 4 hours a day as part of my retirement plan. I'll also coach football. Maybe I'll drive a school bus. I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to stay up all night flying the North Atlantic, India, South America. I'm done with that. Miss the paychecks, miss the people, will not miss the commute into the airport, and will not miss the hit that it places on your body. Okay. So anyway, these are the off the top of my head, which I came up with this morning. Father Time PMDG 777 instructional series. Reason being, I kind of migrated over here to be on the 777 because of not being able to process all the different kind of airframes I was kind of instructing on in the new sim world. I've only been at this 3 months and going to work. And do I push? Do I pull? Do I twist left? Do I twist right? Is it VNAV? Is it speed? Is it perf? Is it flight level change? Is it speed intervene? Is it, there are too many things. So I go to work and I'm kind of sitting there and I find myself getting the job done, but a little hesitant at times. So I said, I came over to P3D, bit the bullet, started to learn the P3D format. Also, I could fly the PMDG instructional series, and this is what I'm going to try to do so that when it comes to Microsoft Flight Simulator, I have these 17 videos kind of ready to go. And I put MSFS in front of it, PMDG 777, and that's my plan. But anyway, welcome to my face. Okay, well, there you go. Got it set up, cold dark airplane at London Heathrow in the PMDG paint scheme. Freighter version, by the way. Oh, yeah, well, something interesting. If any of you guys know what happened, the 777-300 dropped out of my PMDG, and with that, so did the electronic flight bag. So we'll get that back for that part of the series. We don't need it for the origination pre-flight. So first thing I always do when we get out there is you make sure there's no maintenance around the aircraft. You would have checked the electronic flight book in operations anyway. When you get in, we still have some paper copies in the cockpit. Look those over. If you get the chance to look outside as you walk up to the airplane, I look for maintenance. Any engine doors open, any gear doors open. Doesn't appear to be any activity around the aircraft. Naturally, we have to get the jet bridge brought up or the stairs to get onto the airplane. Back in the cockpit. As with every airplane, when you first walk in, its general appearance, I look for they put a plastic cone, almost like a traffic marker that says do not touch. And if you see anything in there, you obviously don't touch any power, do anything. They're probably working either in the E&E bay or underneath the aircraft, and you don't want to hurt anyone. But today, there's nothing in there. We pick up the logbook because it was sitting on the chair right over here, and we find out that there's nothing in the logbook of any significance. We start off, we look at the circuit breakers. We are not allowed to push in any circuit breakers ever. So we look up, none have popped. They were. We call maintenance. There's some more back in here. We check the life preservers behind the seats. We come up here and back up in here is the PBE, the pressure breathing equipment that we would use to fight a cockpit fire. Can't see that, can you? Bad habit. So anyway, it's in here. It's the hood, basically. You seal it, pull it, look for the blue, no humidity in there. While we're at it, All the way around the other side is the walk-around oxygen bottle. Every pilot's worst fear, cockpit fire. Think of those Swiss Air 111 guys all the time. What a horror. There it is. Oh, I want to show you something. If ever you get to an outstation, maybe you're in VATSIM and they walk in your cockpit and they say, can I see your aircraft registration, please? It's up here. Your cell call's up here. Your registration when the aircraft was delivered to your airline. Everything's right up there. You have to circuit breaker panel and check that. Crash axe, make sure you have a crash axe. They'll take your scissors, your little clipper scissors for your makeup and your eyebrows at customs, but you have a crash axe in the cockpit. Yeah, whatever. Everyone's going to do what they got to do. So anyway, like every airplane, it's pretty much standard in the 777. We come up the middle first. We check the fuel control switches are in. Fuel control levers are off. Throttles are idle. Flap levers up. Speed brake levers down. And gear handle is down. Come up here, believe it or not, wipers. They're off. You don't want to scratch the windshield. Now with all that, after you're done with all that, oh, look, we have external power. I'm going to turn on the battery. Now, a little bit something about this. We're going to turn on the external power. You're supposed to have two external power sources. This thing is a power hog on the ground. So you're supposed to have primary and secondary. Today we'll turn on the primary. But we're going to need a secondary. If they couldn't hook it up, we'd start the APU, which we will in a second. But before we do that, of course, now what I don't know how to do, guys, is in the sim world is test this and simultaneously look down to show you the master warning light and any associated messages. But fire overheat test. As a minimum, I would do that, and I'd look down, check to see any associated messages. Now, because we don't have secondary hooked up, oh, by the way, this is very realistic. These screens take quite a while to come online. They stay blank for a while. To be honest with you, I'm going to start the APU, by the way. I rarely get to the airplane on this case. This is a fairly realistic scenario in that the time that I see this is when we're doing a ferry flight. Let's say I get a phone call and say, hey, we're going to move this 777 from Kennedy down to Miami because it's going to Buenos Aires tonight. Do you want to fly it? And I'll come drive in the most hazardous part of my job, down the 95 corridor, pick this thing up at the hangar, and it's truly cold dark at that point. Normally, as a captain, you get out to the airplane, and this thing is up and running, loaded. Yeah, I got two FOs, sometimes three, and everything's pretty much ready to go when I get out there. I come on, I brief the flight attendants, I build my nest over here, and we get going and we start running our checklists. I usually try to get out about an hour prior, which is early, but that way, if any problems, we're ready to roll. But anyway, I'm talking because, as you can see, the screens have yet to power up. It's going through. It's taking a little while. Now, without the secondary power source, and without the APU started as of now, the flight attendants may be on the airplane. They may be calling up saying they don't have any galley power. That's called shedding, load shedding. With only one external power source, it's very possible you'll get load shedding. Looks to me like APU is starting. Let's take a look. You can go outside and listen to it. You guys want to hear the APU? You know? Is it? Yep. APU's running. There it is. Even get all the PMDG sound effects to go with it. So now what do we have? We have two power sources because when the APU comes on, if the secondary were on, it would kick that off. All right? It doesn't kick off primary, but it kicks off secondary. If we were to kick off the external power, APU would pick up the whole load. We're going to keep them both going for now until they come on. However, normally when ground hears the APU running, they'll come over and ask permission to disconnect air, although we don't have any. PMDG, we'll play with it a second. Actions, doors. Well, let's bring some stuff up to the aircraft service vehicles. Let's get the cargo doors going. Forward galley. Let's bring them all up. Let's get some fuel out here, guys. Portable water will request that. Maintenance van. lavatory. Get everything set. Chucks are set, and parking brakes on. Let's take a look out and see what's happening out there now. What you guys got going on for us? Yeah, here they are all showing up now. There they're all coming. I feel so powerful. Yes, come to me. Fuel me. Load my cargo. Anyway, get all these trucks going on. PMDG. It's the best, man. All right, so anyway, we also, if you're a PMDG fan, you can aircraft, equipment, displays, guide swap. No, but not going to do that. Sorry. FSF flight sim action, doors, can arm all. You can also check the door display. Up here, I'm just doing this, let everything power up so we get on to the next part. And there it is. You can see we got our cargo doors open and entry doors open, but there's no stairs brought up there yet. That's interesting. The reason these are all blank, because we haven't started the IOU alliance. So now we got the APUs running, and we got 2 power sources. Hit the ADARU. 7 to 10 minutes. As soon as the pilot hits the ADARU, they rush down because they want to get it aligned before the 7 to 10 minutes comes up. So let's stop doing this. So first thing we do is come in here, FMC, check the database. Oh, I have a Navigraph account. You can update the FMC database via Navigraph. Unbelievable. I was not getting a bunch of SIDS and stars, and when I updated the database, all of a sudden I got all the SIDS and stars. People are scary smart out there. So anyway, route, and we got to go init, and now the GPS is up. That takes a while to come up too, guys, so just be patient. The reason I'm doing all this talking is because it does take a while to power up. All right, so line selected, the GPS down, and I put it in. As a technique, it's kind of old school. I put in the airport. Really not required anymore, but we used to always do it, and I check those for reasonableness. Sometime in the sim world, you get a little confused where you are, so that'll catch it right there. And now route, I'm going to put in EGLL to KJFK. And there's not going to be any route in here, I don't believe. Let's see. It's thinking. I am going to go through a whole instructional series on how to load the, load, and how to load the database, and how to do manual loading. Everything to do with the FMC will be probably my second video. Let's get the thing up and running, and we'll go from there. So I'm getting it initialized, and this actually is more than we would do here. Usually after you get initialized, somebody goes out and does the exterior inspection, and the other person does the box, starts the inside. But anyway, I'll come back to that, okay? So usually, upper left, so we go these columns, top to bottom, 4 columns. Come all the way up. Oh, way up here. I'll go put you upside down for a second. Make sure all these switches are guarded. I mentioned the circuit breakers. ADARU is on 7 to 10 minutes, basically your IRSs. Thrust asymmetry computer, what is that? It's going to take a while to go through this. I'm going to explain a few things. Old man's airplane, 777. You fly with the most experienced cabin crew, more importantly, the most experienced cockpit crews. The guys are awesome. But, not to mention, it has so many automated features, one of them being the thrust asymmetry computer. In the event of an engine failure or differential thrust, more than 10% differential between the engines, it automatically puts in rudder. Exception being just on the runway, it'll let the nose turn a little bit so you know which engine failed. How's that? That's a thrust asymmetry computer. It detects asymmetry and puts the appropriate amount of rudder in. Old man's airplane. Primary flight computers. We have primary, secondary, and direct. It's basically all the different what they deal with talking to the computers to all direct input. So it has all the variations. Naturally, what this airplane does is you put in a flight control, it talks to the boxes and says, this is what he wants. The boxes say, then do this, and it moves the flight controls. It may not be the ailerons and spoilers exactly how you would have done it on the push and pull airplane, but it tells the airplane fly-by-wire what to do. All the way down to direct, where you bypass those computers and you go directly to the flight controls. Kind of has everything, but with that you get various degrees of protection. But anyway, you get no lights there. Cabin utility buses. If the flight attendants call up and say, "Hey, we don't have any galley power back here," two things: you either have only one source and it's shed, or you forgot that somebody turned this switch off. This is all good. We'll go on external, because they say they call up and they say, "Hey, can we pull external?" Say sure. So we'll go down here and we'll pull external. Uh, Ground connections, ground power release, and I don't know what that is. They're disconnecting. Nope, we don't need any of the air conditioning unit or starts. Okay, back up top. I digress. And they pulled it. All these lights are normal. These are CDGs, drive disconnects. In the event of low oil pressure or high oil temperature, the CDGs will be ordered to be disconnected. You push the switch. Once you push it, you can't get it back. So you would be starting your APU to get another generator. So these are your generators. Left generator, right generator, high oil pressure, high oil temperature, low oil pressure, and you would back it up by via checklist, disconnecting it. Once you disconnect, you got to be on the ground with maintenance. Wipers we know about. Ground proximity runway override. These are ground proximity switches. Glide slope inhibit, flap override if you're engine out or not, non-landing flap setting. Gear override in case you have a gear problem and you got to land gear up or the gear indication's inaccurate. But this one, ground proximity runway override. If you're, let's say, God forbid, on fire, and you got to put this down on an airport piece of runway that is not in the database, this airplane is going to be screaming and yelling at you if it doesn't know where you're going. You would put in ground proximity runway override to tell it, I know, it's not in your database. We know what we're doing, and that's it. Emergency light switch. This should have been off when you get on here. That's not good. Sorry. But you just switch the switch up, and it arms it. Service interphone is off. You don't need it. Window heat we just leave on all the time. Ram air turbine. You guys probably know what a RAT is. A ram air turbine. It's actually a propeller. Comes out on the, believe it's the right side of the aircraft. In the event of dual engine failure, it provides center flight control hydraulic pressure, as well as increases the amount of flight instruments you have available to you. So you got lose both engines, lose both generators, you're down to battery power until you can get that APU started. This thing comes on, drops down, and the air at speeds I think above 135 knots provides extra electrical, more importantly, center hydraulic flight controls. That's the ram air turbine. I have a funny story about that. I was on the MD-11. This is back in like 1994, 95. Landed from a Santo Domingo turn, and they said, "Oh, we need you to do a ferry flight." So we're tired. Been a long day, and all you're going to do is a maintenance flight. They need to go up and run some checks on the box and a rat check. We had just gotten the MD-11, so there's a bunch of procedures we're doing. Don't do this anymore. But we take this airplane up, and we said, hey, well, as long as we're doing these, why don't we fly over Manhattan? Remember, this is 1996. So we're flying up on Manhattan, and the captain and I are kind of looking out. Wow, this is cool. And air traffic control, they have no problem. They're letting us orbit over Manhattan. Not anymore, but that's what they did back then. And the maintenance is running check, and they come up and they go, hey, guys, last thing we have to do, we have to deploy the rat manually and check for pressure. We can land with the rat deployed. They said, okay. So they went up, they pushed it. They're looking at this gauge, and they said, oh, no pressure. Rat's malfunctioning. So it shows rat deployed, but no pressure. So we come in and we land. You can guess what happened. So we land, we taxi in, we're exhausted. We're going to go home. And maintenance comes back in and said, hey, there's a bunch of wires hanging out. The rat is gone. The rat was about a 7-foot long blade, like propeller, and on the MD-11, not on this thing. It was gone. It had flown off when the door opened up. It just went flying off of Manhattan. So I'm convinced that somebody somewhere has a rat propeller hanging over their fireplace in Brooklyn, but never did find it. Never did hear about it. For whatever reason, cold dark airplane, these switches should be off, guys, as well as the fuel pumps. I did that because I went from engine start to cold dark to reset this thing, and as a result, so they would be off. Anyway, all the hydraulics are off. Seatbelt sign, we'll just turn it on now. We're going to be pushing back here shortly. Something about turning on the hydraulics. We'll talk before engine start, but some airlines do this. They go wax on, wax off. They start on these are all electric pumps. This air. This is electric, 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 electric. This is air. If the aircraft is in the air, it's got pneumatic air. Basically, turns and moves the propeller. But and these are the engine hydraulic pumps. So you got the engine hydraulic pumps, 4 electric pumps, and these 2 in the middle are air for just uses airflow to drive some extra pumps for demand. But some airlines turn on this one, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait, and when this fault light goes out, which takes a while sometimes, boom, then they turn on these 2, then they turn on these. And the reason they do it like that is to prevent transfer between the reservoirs. Now, some airlines just do wax on like that, wax off, you turn them off the other way for the same reason. I'll turn them off. But that's usually how you'll see them doing it in instructional videos. They'll turn on the right electric, wait for the fault light to go out. It takes a while. Then they'll turn on the center electric. Then they'll come in here and turn on these. Not the engine pumps just always leave on. Turning them off, you go wax off like this way. I'm only bringing that up because that repetition is the key to learning, right? But that's the correct configuration right there. Seatbelt signs on. A little bit about these lights. Master lights. See the little white dot right there? 1, 2, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are the white dots. If everything was on the white dot, you could control them all just using the master switch. It's kind of cool. Any ones that are not in the white dot, let's say you did that, the master's not controlling that. It only controls the ones on the white dot. So if you did the checklist, everything was on the white dot. And by the way, the FO has them over here too on the white dot. You can override your particular screen. Let's say you wanted your PFD a little brighter. That's the outboard display. It's outboard display. That's inboard display. And you said, I want mine brighter. You had it up. The master's no longer controlling that, but it is controlling any other ones that are on the white dot. That's what the master is. I'll show you this in real time when we get going. That's the master dome. We usually leave the storm lights on at night when we're in the getting the pre-flight so you can see, and prior to engine start we'll turn that off. So they call it storm lights because if you're going into thunderstorms, God forbid, right, you turn on the storm lights, everything in the cockpit goes to bright so you can see better with all the flashes and everything. Never used it for that, but that's what it's for. And we fly around at night over the North Atlantic or deep in the wee hours of the night to stay awake. We keep the storm lights on. Back up here, cargo fire, we can test it all now because we got no power. Because we check on the overhead, we check down here, which I'm not going to be able to do. Master warning lights on, fire test in progress, fire test passed. And that's checked. When I did the original to start the APU, couldn't fully do it because the screens weren't powered up. EEC, what these engine EECs are, electronic engine control, is so you don't overboost the engine. If you took the throttles and jammed them full forward, like a ham-fisted gorilla, the aircraft would not allow you to overboost the engines. It would stop metered the engines to whatever you had set in the thrust limit so that you couldn't overtemp or overboost the engine. That's what EECs are. If they go inoperative, you've got manual procedures to set them. If they're both inoperative for some reason, there's also procedures to preset conditions. But those are the electronic engine controls. So they're all in auto and pushed in and guarded. When you start the engines on the 200, you can start them both at once. On the 300, one at a time. But auto start switch just always stays on. To start the engines, you're going to go to start on both engines and bring both fuel control switches up, and then monitor using the engine secondary page here. Like I said, I'm going to go through this full steam ahead here in a second. Just taking a little time to explain a few things. That's the auto start system. Fuel jettison. These are the nozzles. You could arm them. I'm not going to do it. And then hit this switch over here, and it'll start dumping at 5,000 pounds a minute. So you do the math. In a half an hour, that's 150,000 pounds. That can add your engine out altitude probably about 3,000 or 4,000 feet, what you can maintain. It's critical over the Himalayas. It's also, when you initially start arming, if you don't do anything with the fuel remaining, it'll dump down to max landing weight, so you don't have to do an overweight landing. So let's say you're in the North Atlantic, and you hit this fuel nozzles on, hit the arm switch, it would dump down to max landing weight. You had plenty of fuel in the North Atlantic. You got to be careful, you don't want to dump so you can't reach your destination. You can also adjust it by pulling out here, increasing or decreasing the amount you want dumped. But it's 5,000 pounds per minute. If you want to dump, you should be up above, I think it's 7,000 feet, so the fuel has a chance to dissipate so you don't hurt any vegetation or, more importantly, people on the ground. Fuel cross feeds. Look at that. I think I just did that when I was ham-fisting my way around with the mouse. That's not uncommon. Sometimes the fuelers come up and they walk in the cockpit, you're not there, and they put on a cross feed to transfer fuel on the fueling station. So you always want to make sure those are both, we have two cross feeds, both closed. So my fuel quantity panel check will be like, all right, wing tanks are full, cross feeds are open, so closed. And then you read the fuel, compare it to what you're supposed to be. Reason being, you fill up those wing tanks before you put any fuel in the center. So wing tanks are full, cross feeds are closed. And the reason is, if you left them open, sometimes you're not paying attention, you'll have a fuel imbalance somewhere just prior to takeoff. You only turn on the center pumps if you have fuel in the center. If you get fuel low, warning, you turn them off. And otherwise, if you have fuel in center message, you turn them on. So you may have 4,000 pounds, but you get center tank fuel low message. You have to have fuel in center message to turn them on. Engine ice system, greatest engine ice system in the history of the planet. After you start engines, if you're 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, or colder, invisible moisture, visibility less than a mile, snow, rain, but 10 degrees and 50 degrees as well, or snow or ice or any kind of condensation on the taxiways, 10 degrees. After you start engines, you turn them on. That's usually the only time that you turn them on manually. After you get airborne, you turn them to auto. I think maybe in my 6 years of flying the 777, I've seen them come on in auto maybe 20 times. Boeing actually tried to have this certified with no engine ice system, wing ice system, because the engines were so efficient and the wing airframe was so efficient. And the FAA said, I don't think so. So they put it on, but it almost never comes on. The way the system works is, okay, you turn them on one at a time after you start engines, if you have the icing conditions I just mentioned. Once you get airborne, you can turn them to auto. At that point, engine's going to come on and off based on, it has an ice detector up on the front nose air in the vicinity of the TAT probe. If it detects ice like twice, I'm going to make up the numbers, but it's close. Twice, it'll turn the engine ice on. So ice comes on, it heats it up. Ice goes away. Ice comes on, it heats it up. Ice goes away. I think it's 3 times now that I think about it. On the 3rd time, it says, okay, we really do have a lot of ice, and it'll leave on the engine ice. Wing, you got to have like 8 times before it turns on the wing. You can manually turn the wing on if you see any ice buildup here or on the vertical stanchion here or on the windshield wipers. Where are we? That's the auto, but greatest wing and engine anti-ice system in the history of mankind. Right now, we're going to turn on the nav lights, beacons come on before engine start, strobe lights come on before taking off. All the rest of them are optional, but we usually all navs on the ground, beacons on, engine start, strobe on for takeoff, but most of us turn on everything for once we start the takeoff roll as a technique. I'm going to turn off the storm lights. We don't need them now. All the way back up top, these are just the air conditioning temperature control. Here's a funny fact. The flight attendants have plus or minus 5 degrees control in the back. They're working their butts off, right? And so they're usually gang loading. If they can't get comfortable back there, they'll call you up and ask you. Maybe you've got them out of the 12 o'clock position and have these. They don't have enough control. If you put them back in the 12 o'clock position, that gives them enough control back there to keep themselves happy. This is the equipment cooling system. So it keeps the electrical equipment cool, right? It does it through a combination of fans, venting cabin air over the equipment to cool it, recycling cabin air over there. It comes up behind the forward instrument panel for us and the overhead panel, all constantly venting air. However, in the event of smoke, you can you get smoke in the cockpit. It's mask on, goggles on, crew communications established, and 100% on your oxygen. The smoke checklist will, if it detects smoke, open the overboard exhaust valve. It's a little valve that opens after you depressurize because you're not going to get enough cooling air, and the differential air pressure sucks air across the E&E compartment. So in the event of smoke, you could pull smoke out of the E&E compartment if that's where it's coming from by opening that overboard exhaust valve. You do that through the switch right here, alternate switch. The recirc fans, they take cabin air and recirculate them and improves your efficiency by, I believe, 1%. If so, we used to use them when you smoked on the airplane. You turn off the recirc fans and it would be all fresh air. Why would you use that now? Maybe if you had fumes or smoke in the cabin, you wanted to get all fresh air, not be recirculating some sort of hazy, misty, smoky air back there. You turn it off. The checklist would guide you to do that. But anytime you turn it off, it decreases your fuel efficiency by, I think it's 1 to 1.5%. This air conditioning reset switch, under certain conditions, when a pack overheats or bleed overheats, you can attempt to reset it after it cools with this air conditioning reset switch right here. And this is the smoke. You get a smoke light. You move this switch pointed towards it. Anyway, think of this as the panel to deal with smoke or fumes. Otherwise, it operates normally. Left packs and auto, they stay in auto the whole time. You never really shut them off. These are trim air valves. They cycle hot air. So your air conditioning is putting out, you demand a temperature. It's putting out, let's say, 60-degree air, and it will cycle that trim air, put a little more hot bleed air in based on the temperature. It uses bleed air. You can actually see them move around on the air page. Right here, you can actually see the, can you see it on this airplane, guys? I may be misspeaking here. I thought you could. But anyway, hey, while we're here, air page. This is what you asked for, 22, and magenta is what you asked for, and the white number is what you actually get. Here's the trim air. Whew, thought I was losing my mind. You can actually see the trim air moving back and forth. As you ask for hotter air, it will move more hot air. If you ask for cold air, it will just come down. So that's what the trim air are. Under certain conditions, if you have a runaway pack and you shut off both trim air switches, the pack will just put out a steady temperature. I believe it's around 70 degrees, plus or minus a couple, if the trim air system's not working. But this is a pretty cool system. So the magenta is what you asked for, and let's try playing with that a second. This is more of a systems review, isn't it? We'll come up here, flight deck temperature. Let's go way. Remember, it said 24. We'll go all the way down. Kind of weird streaming like this. All right, see how it went? That's what now we're asking for 19, and you see that there's a duct pressure there, by the way, and the cabin temperature is 21. We asked for 19, cabin pressure is 21, and you'll see the trim air start to move colder because it doesn't need as much hot air. But we usually leave them at 12 o'clock for the reasons I mentioned. On passenger flights, the flight attendants will have their rheostat back there. It gives them full authority, and they do a pretty good job. Used to be most aircraft, they say, hey, can you cool it off in coach? And you get very few calls here because they do have control back there. That's a trim air system. Bleed air system. These are normal. These are the engine bleeds. APU bleed on and off under certain conditions. You know, the ISO switch is just all, this is just all automatic. Pressurization. You could, if you had a difficulty with the pressurization, manually take it over. You just go overboard exhaust valve. You could go manual and open or close it this way. We do it on a ground evac, or if we're having trouble with pressurization. This is a cabin rate of change. You can cabin altitude, landing altitude. You can set that. Normally, it's set automatically by look at cabin altitude, but whatever you have in the box. Right now, it's 100 feet because it's all open. Landing altitude's 100 feet because we're going to a Kennedy. Actually, it's London because it changes over, I think, halfway to Kennedy. Have to review that one. It's been a while. Wipers. So we finished with the overhead. I'll show you that at full speed in a minute. Hope this is helpful. So one is just kind of a systems review and full speed. Then you come across like this. Usually the captain does their side and the FO does their side. They'll do all these panels up here, but you want to make sure he's got PFD, ND, altimeters are set. Set these two altimeters, check it with field elevation. Now you come down the middle. I haven't done the MCP yet. We're going to do that in a minute. All right, so ground flap override, gear override, all these lights are out. Terrain override, gear handles down, alternate gear extend is off. So if you want to put alternate gear extend, you come in here, you put it down, the gear free falls down through a little hydraulic latch that comes off and just free falls on down. Auto brakes, usually keep it at RTO right off the bat. I usually leave this at engine. Well, when we get down here, okay. EFIS panel. It's only on the FO side. Look at these switches. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so, and COM too. So we start off here. We go engine. And here's where we check the oil. I think it's on the 200. You need 21 on each side. Might be, yeah, I think it's 21. Have to look that up. Then you go to stat, and you check the oxygen. You need I think it's 1250. Generally, certain temperatures based on the bottle temperature. You also can check the oil quantity. You get no refill on the hydraulics, on the APU, on the oil. So oil quantity is all good. Pressure is good. Crew pressure is good. So, and you come down checklist. So we went engine, stat, checklist. We go to checklist resets, and you go reset all. And that's it. Go back to normal. It resets normal and non-normal. Come back up here. And we do nav. And we go COM. And COM panel, we check. Okay. Captain Marvel's spazzing out here. Okay, so we don't have it on this airplane. COM panel, we can normally come up here and reset the data manager. CPDLC has 8 cars on here, but in the case of these aircraft, it does not have it. And cancel recall is the last thing. Cancel, look over here. Recall. I'm going to do it again. Cancel. Recall. So anything that was previously cleared before you got there will come up. We use that quite often but we'll leave that on for now. Okay, and did alternate gear, auto brakes. Okay, spoiler levers down. Um, Pitch trim's in the green for now, or we'll deal with that later. Speed brake levers down, flaps are up, and we also always check the. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. And throttles are closed. Fuel control switches are cut off. Stab trim cutoff switch. If you had a runaway stab trim, airplane was basically like the 7.3 Max going up and down. Whoa, what's going on here? You could go stab trim cutout switches to cut out. It used to be a memory item. It isn't anymore. Then hold your, kind of your pitch and power. Try to figure out what's going on there. That probably would have saved the Max situation. I'm not judging and I'm not positive that's true. But what used to be procedurally, we challenged each other to go stab. The procedure was to go stab trim cutout switches, cut out, and in the case of the Max, that probably would have saved them in every instance. I think it still should be a memory item. Fuel fire handles are pushed in. To release it, you push that button and pull out. If the fire light is on, you don't have to push that button. But if you want to pull that fire handle, let's say you had a catastrophic engine failure but no fire light, you have to push that button before you pulled. That's for the engines, and that's for the APU. And this is for cargo fire up here. You know, I never went over that, did I? This is cargo fire. So if you had a cargo fire, you would arm the bottle and push the appropriate cargo fire switch. It immediately deploys one cargo fire bottle, and I think it's 30 minutes later, or at landing, it slow deploys the other one. I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you. It's not important, but it gives you an idea. This is the flight control disconnect switch, direct switch. Make sure that's in normal position. And this is your alternate flap extension switch. Make sure that's in normal. Here we usually set in on data link, we'll set in the dispatch desk number, and we'll set in AA maintenance or maintenance for our company, or Shanwick or Gander or Shanwick. There's all sorts of frequencies you can put in, and because you can use SATCOM right here to talk to any of them. It's the greatest thing. So if you want to talk to your dispatch desk, you put their desk number in, and you push here, you put place call, calls them. It's like to sit in the cockpit with you. It's so clear. Same thing with talking to Gander Oceanic, Shanwick Oceanic, Keflavik, Santa Maria, anywhere. We have dozens of places we can call and get information. So the days of sitting there on an HF radio with static and trying to get a word in edgewise are kind of gone. So you just program in your desk. In here, we would definitely put in ground frequency to start off with, put that over, and probably tower in over here, or clearance, probably clearance delivery and ground to start off. But clearance we usually get automatically. So truthfully, it'd probably be ground over here, tower here. On the other side, we'd have preset ramp, which are our operations, ramp and operations, or ramp and guard, depending on where we are on this freaks. But we set our preset. This is our third VHF radio. It's in data. Data is for ACARs. If you're not getting ACARs, you may be out of the data mode. So you slew it around and get data in there. This is this observer's audio panel for the guy sitting in the jump seat. That person can make all the radio calls for you. They can make PAs. They can do anything you put them up to help you out. So it's important to utilize them. And back here is the second observer, or the FC. FB's here in between. And that person also has a comm panel. That person back there. They have a comm panel over here where they can do the same thing. They can make radio. It's just a little harder for them to read the radio frequencies. And of course, the transponder is not in TARA yet because we don't have our clearance yet. And rudder trim and aileron trim is neutral. And that's it. So, okay, I didn't mean to do that. Over here, the captain checks their oxygen. Notice I'm not using pronouns. I'm not saying he or she. This is your work table lights. They also come over. Each person does their own thing. They set their altimeters. They set their engine out acceleration altitude here. In our case, it'd probably be, oh, where are we? London, around 900 feet, and there's no engine out procedure. So I'm setting 900 in there, whatever the engine out is off the takeoff power set. Yeah, I'm a little bothered by losing the, we'll say it's 900, okay? And altimeters, and looks good. All right, now we are ready to do the box. So the way we do the box, we already did the route. It downloads everything. It even has the North Atlantic except the stars. So you come in here. Our first point is Compton, and we're going to take off on, let's say, 27 left. Making this up. 27 left. Flight number, let's go PMDG 123. Yeah, you get it. You get the idea. 123. Not important here. MDG is fine. Let's see. Departures arrival. We're on 27 left. So Compton 3 Foxtrot 27 left. There it is. And then for the arrivals, it's going to be arrival, Parts 3 arrival to 2 left. We do put in off Kennebunk transition. We do put in departures and arrivals so that all our speeds are updated. Perfinite, I think wind is probably in here by now, right? It's not in here. It'll come up when I do this, except that when we'll say that the fuel was supposed to be 210, that'll all update automatically. And the zero fuel weight was 452.4. This would all update automatically, by the way, guys. And the wind, go to route. I know I'm going fast. Load. Takes a minute. Execute. And then descent, you go to VNav. Next. Forecast. Load. So now you've got the, we'll go back through this in a second at normal speed, okay? And now we can go takeoff. We're going to go flaps 5. We're on a 200. This is probably a 5. Our CG was 25. And our bugs come up. We check those for reasonableness with our TPS. All right. And now when I have that set, 174, I come up here and I put in, I do my MCP. 174. 174. Flight directors are on both sides. And 174, I just hit the wrong button. And our runway heading is, we'll say it's 270. For runway 27, 269. Let's go. Let's be fancy. Then we'll go 6,000 is usually the altitude on the thing. So the and will be LNAV, VNav right now. So that's our MCP. Then we get together and we review the flight plan. You ready to look over the flight plan? Said, yes, sir. I always start with the database. Come in here. We both make sure we have the correct database. Yep, it's good. Otherwise, we'd switch around and reload everything. Then I go to route, and I'd read the route. ETL, KGFK, runway 27 left, flight PMDG 123, and a route is copied. Next page. Why did the Compton 3 Foxtrot not come in there? Don't know. It's not doing it. Let me see something here. Compton 3 Foxtrot, no transition. I guess maybe you got to put no. That's weird. That doesn't matter. That's a simism. That would definitely come in there. Compton 3 Foxtrot, Lima 9, you read it all the way down to all the way to Kennedy. And you go to legs. You come up here and you go to plan because you're going to walk through each leg. including the SID. So at this point, you get out your iPad and you go over the points on the Compton 3 Foxtrot. Make sure you get all the crossing altitudes. And matter of fact, if they ever change the runway, this is for 27 left, you got to go back through and step through all the points. There'll be a bunch of points in there. But by going through here, and you actually looking up here for any discontinuity on the nav display, you'd walk it all the way in. If you wanted to, you could put the crossing restrictions on the other side. That's on North Atlantic. When you get here, you actually have to check the lat longs on each of the North Atlantic points. Make sure that they're correct all the way down. And at the end of it, you check Prague. Make sure that the mileage 3115 matches with the flight plan, give or take 50 miles or so. If not, you kind of look for where maybe you made a mistake. But it's usually within about 30 or 40 miles. And that's that. And then the last thing you do is you go to NavRad and make sure no one is hard tuned. It's either auto or remote. There's no manual tuning in there. And that is the pre-flight, origination pre-flight. That's how you do it. And if you want to see it at normal speed, this is the normal speed. Okay, you come in, circuit breakers are good. You got the PBE, pressure's good. Oxygen bottles, pressure's checked. Windows are closed. Ropes are available on both sides. Windows are closed on both sides. Up the console, fuel levers, fire switches, handles, flap levers, speed brake lever, gear handle down, wipers are off, battery switch is on, external power is on. Maybe come up here. I want to start the APU. I do the test, start the APU, turn on the ADARU, boom, immediately come down and initialize the FMS by, I'll stop here in a minute, guys, just trying to show you it's pretty fast. Make sure the database is correct. Go to position init. By now you'd have boxes here. Put the GPS coordinates in there. And at that point, one guy does the walk around. The other guy starts with the overhead. ADARU is on. Thrust asymmetry computers. All these are in normal position. Cabin utilities on. Batteries on. APU generator. Lights are on. These are all normal. You don't have any disconnect lights on the CDU. This is guard and off. Emergency lights are on. Oxygen, supplementing oxygen switches are. Oh, by the way, yeah, that would that guarded switches is on. Window heat's on. Ram air turbine lights off. All the hydraulic pumps are off this time. Seatbelt sign is usually off. No smoking sign is on. All the lights, I usually keep them on the dot in the position. All these lights are off except for nav. You got the cargo fire test. We already did that by now. No other lights are off. EECs are in normal. Everything here, auto start is on. Everything else is in normal. Nothing going on with the fuel jettison panel. It's all off. Cross feeds are closed. All the pumps are off. This pump is on, by the way, because the APU is running. Otherwise, you'd have a fault light there, too. Everything on the engine ice, wing anti-ice panel is normal. We talked about the lights. We'll come back up here. Everything's normal. There are no switches other than lights. All the switches are on. Bleeds are on. Pressurization is set. It's an auto. Back down here. This is really how fast it goes, guys. I just look across cockpit, max up the clocks. Right now, there'll be nothing set here, right? Come over to the middle, make sure the altimeters are set, cross-check the altitude. All the ground proximity switches are all off, gear handles down. Auto brakes we put to RTO. Alternate gear extensions in the normal position. Coming down the middle, speed brake levels down, flaps up, handles down. All the way down the middle, trims in the green, parking brakes set, fuel controls off, fire switches are off. I'd set up the freaks now. Ground and tower, ramp and guard, or whatever's clearance delivery. Usually clearance delivery is through that. I'd make sure the captain was on, that's interphone. He's going to be talking to ground. I put his speaker on too. So usually speakers on both sides and interphones on both sides. I'd set up the box for dispatch and usually maintenance for the two SATCOM frequencies. Make sure in data mode here, we won't be able to get any ACARs. Trims neutral, 0 on the rudder, I never mentioned that. 0 on the aileron up here, otherwise I'd 0 them out. If I saw like a big rudder difference of about 3, I'd be questioning whether something was bent on the airplane. Remember, here's another white dot on the switches. and phone is in the cradle. Come over and build my nest, right? My nest would be the oxygen, if you remember. Oxygen, check the oxygen. Come over here, check all my lighting. Set my altimeter, set the engine out acceleration. Make sure it's set on the other person's side. Cross-check the altimeters with 75 feet of field elevation on the two mains and 200 feet on the standby, and make sure that we're close with each other. If you saw a difference in the field elevation here, right, London's about 100, you would know you probably had the wrong altimeter. I used the ACARS. Remember, we should have done all this. Engine, stat, checklist, COM, reset all the checklists. Um, I use the ACARS, call up the weather. You make sure the ACARS pre-flight page was set. And you would sign on to ATC here and make sure CPDLC was signed on for, in this case, EGTT, which is London Control. And you go through, the other guy would be ready, say you're ready to review the route. You go through the route page first, then the legs page while you're in plan second. You check the total distance third, and you check the NavRad fourth. Well, that's for another lesson, that whole box stuff, and manually loading it. And that is really the origination pre-flight and gets us up to the before starting engines check. Anyway, it's father time. That's my first time on camera. Um, I make no apologies. I'm 64 years old. All right? Okay. Father time is out. Thanks a lot.